Here's the story of 2020. It was a year for us to live in sync.
So many things that need our understanding. It's time for us to think. It's the story of fellow humans who were busy with lives of their own, but they thought of bringing us together, and we can watch from home. We can all make this world much better. It's about what we're willing to confront. So sit back and enjoy the conversation of these rainbow warriors called the Queer Bunch. The Queer Bunch. The Queer Bunch. It's a great day to watch the Queer Bunch.
Hello, everyone. Welcome, guys. Welcome all, and welcome to the Queer Bunch. How's our host today? Morgan, what's been happening?
Doing pretty well. I had a show yesterday at the Cathedral Village Arts Festival and another one coming up on Saturday. So, yeah, keeping pretty busy in advance of my album releasing next
You're
month.
working on some new music, right? Yeah, as far as
Yeah.
cool, good. Can't wait. Casper,
Hello,
how are you?
I'm good, enjoying the weather and everything.
I was going to say it's so hot today. You're lucky I showed up in clothes. Take my shirt off. It's so hot. But
You're
hey,
the OnlyFans version of the Queer Bunch.
so it's hot in Montreal today.
It is hot, yeah.
It's,
I mean, it's been like 25 degrees for
yeah,
a few days, so
25
yeah.
here. Yeah. Kenny, how's the weather in
N-
East?
Not as hot as you folks are
No?
experiencing it, but I live on the Atlantic Ocean, so there's that.
Yeah.
But it's nice. It's very sunny. It's very beautiful. It's supposed to be nice all week, which is very good because I'm about to literally jump in a car and drive to Quebec City for a wedding.
Did that now after the show?
Oh, tomorrow.
Oh, tomorrow. Okay, cool. It's like, oh my God, you'll be driving overnight. That'd be
Oh
good.
no,
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 okay.
not doing that.
What's happening at the Q review? Anything new?
Lots. It's busy. It's actually more busy day work than it is Q stuff, but we've got Pride coming up in a number of different places. We have a big festival. It's going into its second year this year, and it's called Ingo Beach Pride, and it's on Cape Breton Island. And so it started last year, and this year it has blossomed even more so. And so hopefully going to be taking a part in that. I am also working on hopefully doing a few events in the city, and we will see. There's a lot of moving parts, and yeah, as everybody knows.
Cool. Well, I guess for me, a new song just came out. We Are Dancing Together. A new music video is coming out. Another song will come out in July. Never Giving Up, and an anti-bullying empowerment sort of message. And then the album End of Summer. But what I'm excited about a lot is it's now 4 weeks. I'm excited and scared. In 4 weeks, we're doing the first live entertainment music festival here for Pride Toronto and the Church and Wellesley Village area. Casper is on stage. We got Shelly Ann, my co-performer in and We Are Dancing Together is going to be on. And we just got a confirmation Carol Pope will be headlining. So yeah, we're working on it's now about 29 artists from one
That's
in the
awesome.
yeah, 1 in the afternoon, 5 hosts. It's a lot of moving parts. I'm very scared. I've never touched anything like this in my life. So we'll see what kind of disaster will be at the on the day off. But no, I think it's gonna be fantastic. It's a lot of love. Everybody's excited. A lot of representation from different artists. So I think we're gonna be doing great. And let's jump into the episode. I am excited. I don't know. I've been wanting to have this conversation for a while because I think it's something that we're all going to deal with at some point, and understanding what we can do as a society. So we're talking about ageism today. That's going to be our main topic of conversation. Ageism, and especially ageism within our community, which seems to be just very prevalent as well as in the broader world. Before we take a break, I took the screenshot from a community artist who posted a picture of Diana Ross last week. I guess she was in town. I think I heard that. And he said, "No, I did not go to see Diana Ross last night, and I hate the world." Glad it was such a great show, though. She's still kicking it at 80, still the boss. And that I think is a good start to talk about how do we look at aging when somebody is able to still kicking it at 80 and perform. Should we be allowed a society to tell them no, you shouldn't be performing at 80 or any of that? So we'll come back to discuss this topic. Don't go anywhere. And we are back with the queer house of the queer bunch, and we are talking ageism today. And I thought I've been for the last month preparing for this, grabbing a few screenshots from social to try to springboard our conversation. I got this from a post that somebody commented on Variety, an article by Variety. Aging gracefully. I guess that's what the article was talking about, aging gracefully. And somebody commented this, and I love their comment. Aging gracefully is a term that society uses to reduce people's freedom as they pass a certain age. Aging with dignity means not drawing a lot of attention, not doing things that might confront others in the mirror of the passage of time because it is something that terrifies them to see. Aging gracefully, in a few words, is accepting that people define your last years of life, your desires, your expression, or what you want to do in order not to feel ashamed and mocked. The person who commented, but I didn't grab the whole screenshot, said Madonna is a clear example of someone who does not want to age gracefully, and that's a good thing. So what thoughts on that comment? It's a big loaded comment.
It really is.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, how do we deconstruct that comment?
It's difficult. It's quite challenging. So as some of you do know, I work, my daytime work, a lot of my big projects right now deal with seniors, and even the word seniors is a problem.
Becoming challenging.
Because it gives the impression that
you've crossed a certain threshold.
Well, yeah, and really, when you look at and it really is I think it's kind of a North American thing for the most part.
Right.
But if you look at other cultures, they revere their elders, and they refer to them as elders of the community. And those elders come with wisdom, they come with knowledge, they come with experience. They are always included in things. They're revered. We do the opposite, and we say, okay, we need to kind of set them aside, out of sight, because that we don't want to have to deal with that. We look at aging as and those who are aging as if it's a chore.
Yeah.
When really the person hasn't diminished in their own respects. They're being made to feel diminished, and that in itself with their mental health. And that's just one part of it. When you look at the whole kind of scope of it, there's so much isolation. And when you talk about queer and aging, there's already isolation within the queer community in so many different
You're aging at 35 in the queer community. So yeah.
But then you add in aging and the isolation that comes with aging, because there's nothing that's out. I said one day, it's like there's more to life than bingo once you pass a certain age. Like
Okay.
you don't hit a certain age and kind of go like, oh well, it's all over now. Please hand me my dauber. I'm off to Tuesday night bingo. Like that's not what happens. And I think we're seeing a change in the way that I think maybe people are handling aging because they don't want to be set out to pasture. They want to keep going. They want to, you can retire from your career, but that doesn't mean you stop working. That doesn't mean you don't stop getting involved in your community in that. And I think that is something that we it's a real issue. And I think that isolation that comes with it
You
is
said
really
something about being North American, and I didn't think about that actually before we started. Hi, Brooklyn. Brooklyn is joining us. She was delayed at work, and there she is. Yay!
Hello, everyone.
We just did the opening, and we're diving in the topic of ageism. So we're deconstructing a comment that I saw on Facebook. But you're right. Now that I think of, I mean, I'm guilty a little bit too. I did use in my 20s the line, they're not acting their own age, and whatever that meant to me at the time. They're not act. But if I look now that you say it's North American, my aunt, I've talked about in things of my aunt being a famous singer in Lebanon, and at 90 years old, she was still being invited by the young people to do talk shows and interviews to learn from her because she was revered. She wasn't just to put aside. She was like, she was the icon, the trailblazer of women, and everybody wanted to learn. And when she sat for interview, the respect that they give their elders is completely different. Like, it's not about how do you look or whatever. It's like, you've done the work, and I'm here to honor you and celebrate you and learn from you. Morgan, Casper, you heard the comment. What do you feel about that?
I have a lot of thoughts actually. One of my big thoughts about ageism is that, as far as I'm concerned, if people are not hurting themselves or other people, they should be doing what they want to do. Like, you want to color your hair, great. You want to have gray hair, great. Whatever. You want to, like, your initial quote before the break there about people, should they still be playing music or performing at 80? Well, yeah, like, if you're at risk to break a hip, if you're breakdancing, maybe don't break dance, but if you're like doing things that are within the scope of what your actual abilities are and not going to hurt yourself or other people, like this idea that you're aging out of something just because of how old you are, I so strongly disagree with. But on the other hand, I also find that there's a lot of, there's so much stigma, especially in like North American colonial culture, about getting old and showing signs of aging, and people are just so desperate to have their Botox and their hair color and whatever to make sure they don't look like they're old because there's so much stigma against it. And I really loathe that. I wish that people could feel comfortable with whatever way they would feel comfortable as an individual, instead of feeling this pressure to always look young and act young and feel young. Like there's honor and like, just, it's wonderful to be able to be old, especially in the queer and trans community. So many of us don't make it that long. And so the people who are older and can show their age, like, that should be a badge of pride. But I mean, that's just my opinion.
You're honestly, you're making me feel some feelings right now. I'm 56, and I don't care whether I look it or don't look it, whatever. But my fear is of being pushed aside, dismissed. You're no longer kind of, and I just don't understand why. Why would I even have to deal with that? As long as I am physically healthy, I'm physically able to do whatever I want to do. My favorite, I don't know if you remember the movie. Is it Club 54, Kenney?
Studio 54 Club. Yeah.
Do you remember the old lady that danced on the dance floor until she died? Yeah. I fucking love her. Sorry, the language, but I think if you want to be 90 years old on the dance floor doing an ecstasy and dancing the night out, I don't care. It's your choice. Well, you should be doing ecstasy to begin with, but that's whatever. But hey, if that's her choice, that's her choice. So I love that character.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of examples out there when, it's even when you see a movie, right? And it's like, well, we've got 3 older actresses and we're going to put them all together in a movie because they're aging together and we have to do a movie about that, when really that there's a place for that, but also that can't be the only place that they should exist.
They
Do you
should
know what I mean?
exist in society.
It's
Yeah, actually, I like that
Well,
observation.
so
Yeah.
and
bizarre.
especially, like you say, for actresses, because there's this weird thing where ageism meets patriarchy, where like men are allowed to grow old a lot better than women are. You know, you see men in their 50s being paired in movies with women in their 20s. And I'm like, how is this okay? You
Yeah.
know?
You know,
Like to be expecting that someone is has this much lifespan and someone else has this much lifespan because of their gender.
thank you. Okay, I'm gonna say this, and then Brooklyn and Casper, hopefully waiting your turn. But Nicola Colin, is that how we say her name from? Oh God, Bridgerton. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Oh,
The
yes.
blonde, yeah, girl from okay. Nicola has opened up about being told to lie about her age during her time as an actor. The 37, my God, you're a kid. But the 37-year-old star told a refinery that she finds ageism in the industry incredibly difficult. I've been advised many years ago by people in the industry to lie about my age. I really wasn't comfortable with it, mainly because I'm not a good liar. But she says it's what you say. The industry is ageist. I do have times when I go home and I'm like, should I have just not disclosed, not said what my age is? But I think ultimately you're then playing a part in the system of oppression of women. Spot on. If you're contributing to that and not saying your age because again you want to hide it, whatever, then that's a problem. You should not have to hide who you are because the society will dismiss you. Casper, what you've got to say? Oh dear, you are on mute. So
Sorry, I was blowing my nose, so that's why I muted myself, because nobody needs to hear that. But yeah, no, like what everybody said, I think, but also like I don't know, because in the Black trans community, there's a different way that we deal with like elders. I find depend like separate than like any other community that I've seen. Except like in Africa and stuff. I feel like yeah, it's like more going back to like our roots, right? Where like elders are like really put on a pedestal because like the life expectancy of a Black trans person in North America is 35 years old. So anybody that makes it past that, it's like you've made it past, what people predicted that you would, make it to. So,
I'm
you
Shafi, I'm
know,
happy to hear
but
that. Yes.
huh?
I'm happy to hear that in the trans community there's a respect for those who made the journey.
Yeah. Yeah. So I find that like it's different and it's always like very, like it's you don't meet like older Black trans people often, right? So it's like whenever you do, it's like
Beautiful.
yeah, it's a different, I don't know, it's a different type of energy. But
Okay.
yeah, but then I find like for me there's the way I like yeah, I don't know, the way that like some like for example you said like men are allowed like cis men are allowed to age differently. um I personally don't feel comfortable in any space that has like a majority of older cis gay men, because for me that's like I will get harassed. Like that's one thing that like kind of like sorry, my dog decided to come and hang out.
Good.
Okay, I know you're happy, but like careful with that tail. But yeah, I find that like oftentimes I've had conversation with people in the gay community where like older gay guys are like, oh, it's ageist for you as a younger person to say that you don't want to date older men. And it's like, no, it's not, you know what I mean? And so for me, I find that it's a lot of, I don't know, maybe it's trauma talking and stuff, but for me personally, when like older men hit on me because I look like I'm in my early 20s. It makes me very uncomfortable. And then I tell them my age and then they're not interested anymore. And like, so I find that, yeah, and I don't, it's not the same with like people of color, for example. It's not the same with like oppressed communities. I find that it's very much like you see the older generation, like sometimes that like they haven't been taught about consent in the same way that we have. And so sometimes like, yeah, and they say that that's ageist. And for me, so like that's one thing that I'm like, I don't believe that it is ageist, but somebody can tell me if I'm wrong. But for me, like that's one thing that like, yeah, as much as like my elders make me feel very safe, sometimes like the age of a crowd is gonna determine whether or not I'm gonna be safe in that situation, you know?
Fair enough. Fair enough. That's your experience. Yeah, I mean, I've had. There was one time where I asked a young guy at a club what time it is, and their answer is like, "I'm not interested." It's like, neither am I. I'm just asking you about the time. So I think
That's
it's
different.
yeah.
But like, like when they come to you and like it's like a sexual comment and like
I,
trying to be like, oh, you look young
I'm
and
interested
fresh. It's like,
regardless.
can we not?
Yeah.
You know? So
Well, and there's a power imbalance aspect too, right? Like, because when you've got somebody that's, of a certain age where they are, old enough that they're used to having more power, but not so old that they don't have that power anymore, and then they're just looking for a younger person to date, like that's often because they're looking for a power imbalance. And so it's not ageist for you to say that you don't want to be in a relationship where there's that dramatic power imbalance
Yeah,
because of
I
age
don't
and
think that should be.
experience, right?
Yeah, exactly. A period. That's yeah. Brooklyn, on the topic, since you're joining us.
I think that Blxck Cxsper made some really important points around safety. And I think that when I think specifically about elders in our community, specifically in the trans community, but also in the larger umbrella of 2S LGBTQ plus, that in general, our life expectancy is quite a bit lower, specifically in the trans community, compared to our cis straight counterparts because of violence, because of homophobia, because of all of the things that we face as a community. And so I think that there is a beauty in knowing that our elders have lived through some really wild times. Like, I was not around in the 80s. I was not born in the 80s. And like, what a time, right? And that's something that I will never experience personally because I was born later, and the older queers in our community have paved the way for us to have the experiences that we have now. But I also think, that being said, that there's a lot of culture that's retained by the older guard. And I think that it's correct in that the older guard of elder queers was a majority of cis white gay men. And because it was also a culture of secrecy, that there were a lot of things that are passed towards now our generation, where I'm hoping that we can continue to become more and more open and authentic and just wide in our ability to be ourselves and love who we love and experience the culture of our communities, but also that I think some of the old ways can start to break down a little bit to make way for the new ideology that's being pushed through, specifically by Gen Z, which I think is just so lovely to witness and see on TikTok and participate in. So
I like this line. I think actually we should have another episode talking about the cultural divide or the generational divide between different generations, and that to me is a hugely problematic thing. I love working with all generations. I try to understand all generations and accept what their experience is different. When I first came here, I sought out elders in our community, lesbian elders and gay elders to learn from. I loved that energy of they experienced the 60s and 70s. I came here at the late 80s to Canada. So I was fascinated by, like you say, I was fascinated by those who had that lived experience. But I also don't like it when people close their mind about moving forward. I mean, you've lived life in that generation. Make room for the new generation and learn from one another. Kenny, you want to say something?
I was going to say, I think that too, something that happens, and it's kind of everyone and no one to blame in this scenario, is that especially I think with queer men is where I see it the most. And I think it's predominantly white queer men, is that there's almost this resentment towards youth sometimes, because our current youth are experiencing things in a different way. They can be out, they can be doing things a little bit more than they could. And that's unfortunate that I didn't have a lot of I would have loved to have been able to go to a prom for sure. Do you know what I mean? But I didn't have that. But that doesn't mean that I should be resentful towards those who are. But there is a bit of this.
There are people, absolutely. I know them.
Horns, and that both sides need to I think kind of look at this and say, you know what, you can't chastise people for being in a different time period and you not having that. You have to find your own kind of way through it or whatnot. But at the same time, don't dismiss the older, guard, because they do have lots to offer. There's a weirdness that's there.
It's a big topic. And so that to be where we are vying into Morgan, you want to say something?
I was just going to say, to me, it almost seems like there's this level of like internalized ageism among some of the older crowd where they go, well, I'm old, so I shouldn't have to learn or change or adapt. And it's like, I've done my learning and changing and adapting. No, like just because you are older doesn't mean, like, look at Sir Patrick Stewart. He's not young, but he is supportive of people, uses people's correct pronouns, is
it's never too late to learn and
it's never too late to learn and adapt and change.
I would like us to get back to ageism, though, I think is just dismissing people when they get older. And we want to try to be careful to dismiss people. I want to read this. And especially, I guess I'd like us to figure out, as artists, should we be allowed to continue doing our art and dancing and singing until whenever we want to? So here's another thing that I grabbed from line. This is a bit longer. The Nerve of Madonna to Pull It Off Again, by Mary Gabrielle and Kristen Lieb. Ms. Gabrielle is the author of Madonna, A Rebel Life. Dr. Lieb is a professor at Emerson College and the author of Gender, Branding, and the Modern Music Industry, The Social Construction of Female Popular Music Stars. On May 16, 2024, wrote, 18 years ago, Madonna observed, once you pass 35, your age becomes, and I didn't realize that, but it's true, your age becomes part of the first sentence of anything written. It's a form of limiting your options and almost putting you in your place. For women, naturally. She was 47 when she said that, and intent upon challenging the cultural script that suggested women, especially female performers, had a use-by date. Why is that acceptable? She asked music writer Brian Hyatt nearly 10 years later, still battling critics who told her to dress her age, act her age, in short, to pack it in and retreat from the spotlight because she was past her prime. Women generally, when they reach a certain age, have accepted that they are not allowed to behave a certain way. But I don't follow the rules. To the question, is she still relevant? Her celebration tour, which concluded this month, is proof that she is. Madonna performed before the largest audience ever gathered to watch a female artist and mounted the single biggest free standalone concert in history. 1.6 million people turned Rio de Janeiro, Capabella Beach, and making her the only woman in history to gross more than 100 million during 6 concert tours. The only other one was Bruce Springsteen. So, but there's so much more to her the numbers that a 65-year-old female pop star pulled off this tour, and despite our increasingly intolerant times, her performance was most relentlessly and delightfully queer since the 1990s groundbreaking Blonde Ambition tour would. Okay, long article, but thoughts on that whole thing?
Regardless of female or male, I think that if somebody's still capable of doing what they do and they do it very well, then you don't drag them down. I mean, you can say whatever you want to. You can not like how she dresses, that she's doing lip filler or whatever. Like, that's whatever. The woman is still writing, producing, making music, going out on tour with her kids, who are always with her. She is not shunning them away anywhere. She has made her own way. Where is the stop line for that? I see none.
But a lot of people do, and unfortunately, if you read the comments on when she started announcing the tour and people being so nasty online, I just loved watching it. I'm not as much fan of I used to be more fan of Madonna, but I'm back fan again in the sense that you showed them, and I love that. I love that she showed them that you can't stop anybody from doing what they want. You're right. You can say not crazy about the fillers, whatever, but again, I don't care. It's not me. It's not my body. It's not my life. As Morgan said, as long as you're not hurting anybody, why would I ever judge you or stop you from being happy?
And there's this weird thing that's like, oh, sorry, Brooklyn, were you going to speak?
No, you go ahead.
Oh, okay. Well, like there's this weird thing where it's like, oh, we obviously have control over what you do. No, it's like if it's my body, then I get to do whatever I want with it. And I get to do that until I am, not able to make those choices anymore, which might be because of like mental capacity or might be because I'm not here anymore. But like, as long as I've got the capacity to make my own decisions, I'm the one who gets to make those decisions. And it should be the same for everybody, regardless of their gender, regardless of their age, regardless of any of that. Like, get the lip filler or don't, whatever you want.
Yeah. And if you don't want to pay the tickets, you don't want to go see her, then that's your choice. But
there's nothing saying these people have to go see her. And yet her audience was very full.
They loved it. And if somebody said, but she was late 3 hours, like, well, yeah, I know that's disrespectful. I'm not into that. But her audience is lapping it up and they're going for it. And I don't care if they're happy. Brooklyn.
I was just going to touch on the concept of the music industry as a whole as it pertains to ageism, and not specifically about Madonna, although lovely artist, very here. Thank you for bringing, some great bops. But I would say something that's so beautiful about the landscape of the music industry today is that previous to that, it was labels and radio that made or broke
oh my God, you're right.
would be listened to as an artist. And nowadays, of course, there's obviously pay to play. There's the Spotify payola system. Labels and radio do still play a large part in who gets listened to the most, that's for sure. However, I do think that there's the possibility of breakthrough artists and artists that can pave their own way into the mainstream without you know, the man, the higher ups making that judgment on appearance or branding.
I didn't think about that. You're right. In the old days, there was the guys who decided what age you should stop at.
Mhm.
Now you can go on for as long as you have more control. We have more control over music.
I mean, we live in a TikTok generation. Fleetwood Mac recharted on top Billboard charts
Yeah.
after decades.
Good point. Good point. Yeah. Casper?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think, yeah, it's happening all the time that like older artists have their old songs like resurface, because there's no like the gatekeepers are changing, right? I was gonna say there's no more gatekeepers, but the way that Spotify is deleting all independent musicians' music right now, I'm like, there is gatekeepers. There's just something different,
Now I'm gonna ask
Uh,
all of us. Do you want to be singing on stage till 95 if you can? Would you want anybody to stop you? Kenny, we don't want to hear him singing, but the rest.
be honest, I don't really know if I want to be 95 one day. I think that's a little too for me. I want to go before my body does, So,
But
so
if you
like,
can, do you want
oh,
somebody to say to you, you
if
can't?
I
No.
can trust, yeah, of course, I want to be on stage, and I still want to be singing sex songs and stuff. Like, why not? I mean, the way it's
I
going,
see-
I'll probably
I
be
like that.
looking
I like that
25
topic.
when I'm, huh?
I like that topic. Should you be also told that you past an age where you should be talking about this topic, or you shouldn't be sexy, or you shouldn't should that
No,
be
you can just like do it for the appropriate demographic because I'm tired of seeing like people like DiCaprio and stuff like with like 20-year-olds. Just do it, but like appropriately because like, there's places for everything, I think.
And
And
I
I think
guess
like if you're, yeah, I don't know. If you're like for me, like the only difference is like if you're a mother or father figure for me, like when you decide to talk about sex, I will tune out um because I don't want to picture my parents doing nothing. um but like you do it because people are having sex in while they're older, it happens all the time, and I think that like one of the reasons why like like maybe older people like some of them like seek younger people is also because they're not given this spaces to seek each other. I don't know.
enough? Okay.
I don't hear
There's a
I don't hear it like in movies. There's so many more like love stories between an older man and a young woman than there are stories between an older man and an older woman or something. You know what I mean? And like, why don't we see that? Like,
I
Yeah.
guess my counter question is who is doing the telling and do those voices matter to you?
Repeat again.
Who is doing the telling? Your question was would you still be performing if
Yeah.
people were telling you not to? Would you still be
Oh, I
writing
love that. Oh, I
a
love that.
people are
topic
already telling me not
they
to.
were telling you not to? But who is doing the telling? And does that voice even matter to you?
Oh my God, you just said
Mhm.
my friend Sherry
That's
Sylvie.
yeah.
Yeah. Said she actually always reminds me of this, and reminds me of any haters or whatever. Um, who are they? And at the end of the day, do they matter?
Yeah, especially as queer people, like people tell us not to perform every day.
Yeah.
Why is it gonna change that when I turn a certain age, people will tell me not to perform? I'm like, bro, you were already saying that 2 weeks ago. Like, and
Yes.
I look like
Of
I'm 18 years
course.
old and I'm still not supposed to perform. So when can I do it?
Thank you.
And like even before I was coming out, when people were like, "Oh, you're a girl," like then they were like, "Oh, and you hit 25, you shouldn't even try now because if you're not there yet, your expiry date is going to pass before you're there or whatever." And like
Freaky.
it's like just shut up.
It's so
No,
creepy.
I'm gonna. Yeah, you know what? I keep forgetting that it's not just the five of us talking, and there's people gonna be watching us. But it was very scary to start singing at 53, because I even heard from friends that, "Are you sure you want to start now? It's past age." Like, what age? I mean, I can write a song and sing it. What age should it be that I have to stop at or not pursue something new? So you're very right, Morgan. It's just this feeling is ugly of somebody trying to stop you from just having the most awesome time, because singing is fun. It's freaking beautiful.
But
And
it's like anything, whenever you have a major change in your life, right? We have gone so long saying that you have one career and that's for the rest of your life, then you retire and you're done. And really what we should be doing is switching it up all the time, because we change as people. And as we change, we might have different interests. And it's all right to make a change. It's all right to change things up. And as a performers, and I'll say from an audience standpoint, look, I mean, I've watched Brooklyn, singer-songwriter style and pop style, and also kick it crazy ass in a very punk freak out mode on stage. And if Brooklyn can do that at 90 and still be going as an audience member, I would welcome that, because it means I'm still along for the journey. I'm still there. I'm still relevant as an audience member, as a fan. Do you know what I mean?
I love
Because
it.
everybody changes. And I think that you can't limit yourself.
I have a friend who wrote her first novel at 60, and now in 67, after 3 novels. I've got somebody who started painting in their 65 and doing amazingly. Imagine if we try to stop them, like that art or those books would not be out there.
Exactly.
Yeah, you should be able to create whatever you create at whatever age. Cool. Brooklyn.
And when it comes to, sorry,
No, Morgan, you go. I've been talking so much.
I've been talking so much. You go first.
Okay, choose one.
Okay, I was going to say that especially as it pertains to queer people, I think that we're working on an adjusted calendar as it pertains to the regular heteronormative experience. And I also think that there's a lot of barriers to access. We have to spend extra time figuring out who we are. We have to do the emotional work. Sometimes we have to do physical work in creating the person that we are and becoming the person that we are. And that puts us on an adjusted calendar. We don't have the luxury of, or sometimes we do, but oftentimes we don't have the luxury of at age 5 being like, yep, here I am, fully formed.
Yes. Yeah.
So,
Takes a while to find that place, that courage to find you. Yeah.
and in addition to that, I think that the music industry, something that I find really frustrating, is in itself a class and economics really come into play in terms of what artists are getting airplay and what artists are able to get their music heard, because a lot of artists have barriers of access financially to be able to record and put out music.
Yeah.
And a lot of those artists with barriers of access tend to be within the queer and neurodivergent communities. And then once we do finally get those opportunities and put our music out there, we don't often get the same type of label attention or support, because oftentimes we would be considered an outlier artist.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And that's why people like Kenney exist, to support everybody.
But it's a very valid point when you think about just exactly what you said at the beginning of that, right?
Yeah.
It does take us longer. We don't have the luxury of walking into the world saying, oh, yes, I figured it all out, or it's okay, I'm fumbling right now, but I can still play in all these different waters. No, a lot of the times it's not until we're almost in our 20s, depending on where we live, before we can actually take one choice change into our life. And then that comes with a whole bunch of self-education again. And you're like, at what point in time can I just exist and just be me without all this baggage, whether I'm carrying it or it's being tossed on my cars?
Okay. Yeah.
I feel that. Yes, I did. But yes, I feel absolutely all of that. But one thing that I was going to say is that it also, when it comes to creativity and art, that kind of thing helps us age better in our brains, actually physically and mentally healthier people are the people who are continuing to do creative and artistic and making things, and so I don't think we should ever stop people from doing that. There's some things, like there's driving. You might get to a certain age where you can't see as well, or your reaction times aren't as good, and maybe you shouldn't be driving. But making art?
I love your
Who's to stop you from?
Yeah, I love your distinction between physicality. You know yourself, but nobody else should tell you when you're physically can. As long as you're able to and able to be creative. Listen,
Mhm.
I don't apologize. I don't care. I'm 56. I'm starting recently doing songs. I'm gonna keep singing. I want to learn piano. I'm gonna do more music videos. I'm gonna put more albums, and until I'm not able to. And if you like it, you like it. If you don't, tough.
There's always-
Exactly.
there's always a place for what it is that you want to do, and it may not be, this massive audience or whatnot, but it starts with you. And if it's something that
Just do what make you happy.
if it's something that does something positive for you, that's the starting point. And
The idea of me saying something that affects somebody to draw back and not do something that they love that could make them happier makes me want to cry. And that's what people make comments like those online. And I think that the effect could be that this artist ends up getting gun shy and drawing back because of all the attacks on them. Makes me very, very sad.
well,
I agree.
goes back to Morgan's comment on stigma too.
Yeah.
There's the
It
stigma
kills
about
creativity,
things.
it kills your spirit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like there's some things like with the question of ageism, there's some things that I don't think are ageism but rather protection for people. Like I come from a family of farmers that have to be told when they shouldn't be farming anymore because they'll farm until they can't farm anymore and shorten their lifespans quite a bit by doing so. But like, if my dad wanted to take up painting or singing or something like that, like I'm not going to tell him not to do that, even when I'm telling him he maybe shouldn't be farming anymore, which isn't yet, but it's coming. But when it comes to creative pursuits and things that exercise your brain and stuff, like no one should be saying no to that.
No, and as you get older, you need more of it.
I think it's a beautiful thing to
Need
encourage
more.
our people who are growing older to pursue things that they didn't have the time for. And imagine the amount of, like I said, imagine if you did, there's 6 or whatever, 5 books that she wrote, my friend, and those books would not exist in the world. So imagine the amount of beautiful creativity we can have if we encourage everybody to just continue.
And I mean, I'll just the proof is in the pudding. When I've talked to seniors about dance, and we have a Dance for Health Seniors program that we do at work. And, sitting down and interviewing a woman in her early 80s who has had a stroke, and she's had, on her left side weakness, but comes to these classes. And because she's gotten back into dance, because she's gotten her body moving, because it's exercising her creativity as well as her physical presence, she can now dance without her walker, like without her cane and stuff. And I'm like, so if you were to limit that and say, no, it's too late for you. And I mean, that's an extreme case, and I know that, but it kind of goes back to how it starts to begin with, where it's kind of like, we don't see you doing that or being capable of doing that, so you shouldn't do it. And then you put it into their head that they shouldn't, so they don't, and they don't reap the benefits from what they could have had.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not. Yeah, that the line that my friend said, "Are you sure?" You know that you were gonna be getting into a vile industry that's gonna be very judgmental of age. And it's like, well, I don't care, really. So yeah, Brooklyn, Casper, any notes on? No,
I mean, also, like, we didn't talk about, like, like, we talked about ageism for, like, one specific group of people, but, like, ageism is also, like, it's discrimination towards, like, any age group, right? And so for me personally, like, the way that I've, like, experienced ageism is that people never take me seriously. When I have meetings for transgenders or the trans mask choir, anything professional, and I have to, like, literally read my resume or, like, say my birth date before people pay attention to what I'm saying, and it's not just in business.
Is that the definition of ageism? I think that's more.
Ageism is the discrimination of age groups.
Any
like,
age? Really?
Any
Okay.
age group.
Okay.
And so, for example,
it's
like,
not just if you get older, it's any age group.
No, it's
Yeah.
any age group,
Okay.
yeah. And so, for example, for me, like, because I look young, I'm in my 30s, but I don't look it. Like, I still get carded sometimes and
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah, people never take
Don't
me
take you
seriously.
seriously. That's not fair, actually.
Never. It's like really hard. And it's not just in business, like professional settings. It's healthcare. It's, like everything else. And it's happened to like transmasculine people. We have the baby face syndrome. I know transmasculine people who are like 50 or like older than 50, in their 50s, but they look like they're 20.
Oh,
And
really?
same thing, nobody takes them seriously because it's like, oh, you're young and stupid. You know what I mean? And it's like, actually, no.
I don't think anybody is they're stupid, and there's no stupid. I don't like that word actually.
There are a lot of people who are young and stupid, but
No, I
I
feel
was young and stupid. But,
I don't believe that just because you're young. I had an editor. I had a young lady, a young woman, who worked here as an admin. Her mom got her a job at the media, and when she started, she was like 18 or something, and she just did some admin and learned it very quickly. And then I was in my office talking about needing an editor in chief, and she walked into my office. She's at 19 and said, "What would it take you to consider me for the job?" I said, "My God, that's courageous. Sit down. What would you do with this?" And she started telling me what her plans or whatever. I said, "You're the editor. You're the new editor in chief." I made an editor in chief of a magazine at the age of 19 because she just knew what she was doing. So
That's amazing.
people don't give
I
that
think you know what
opportunity.
I know 55-year-old and 60-year-olds that I would not hire them for that role because they don't know what they're doing. So I don't think age that's actually the stupid a stupid thing to try to separate. Yeah, Morgan.
Well, speaking of ageism in contexts other than, older folks, in the intersection of ageism and queerness and transness, there's this weird thing where they're like, oh, you obviously don't know because you're so young. And then as soon as you're old enough, they're like, well, why didn't you tell us sooner? So that makes it not true. And like just the way Cxsper was saying that, I was like, that's a really good point because like we're seeing all sorts of people say, oh, you're too young to know to the young people. Oh, you're too young to even consider that. No one should be talking to you about gender or sex when you're that young, and you shouldn't know that you're queer because you shouldn't be interested in a relationship.
I didn't want anybody to miss my accomplishments or my knowledge or my smartness when I was 20, and I don't want anybody to do that when I'm 80 either. You have no right to dismiss talk to me, ask me what I can do, check out what I can do, but you can't just automatically assume something on me. Brooklyn, you were saying something.
Exactly.
I was gonna say, jumping off of that point, I think that fear of young people not understanding or knowing their transness or queerness becomes a major political talking point when trying to block hormone blockers from being used by young trans people. Yeah. And I think that is another large discussion around ageism, in that young people should be able to make the decisions for themselves about whether they want to be using hormone blockers or not, and that a large political platform is really based on trying to make that not happen.
Dismissing somebody's ability to make decisions or do a smart thing or be intelligent because of a certain age group, no matter what the age group is not right. Kenney?
Well, in a case like that too, you have to acknowledge the fact, and a lot of people are not willing to, but you have to acknowledge the fact that somebody who's younger, who's going through this, knows more about this, has read up about it, they're going through it than you actually do 9 times out of 10. But everybody defers to like a doctor without actually speaking and actively listening and taking in what that young person is saying. They know. Do they know that for the rest of their lives? It's not for me to say. Do you know what I mean? But what they're experiencing in that moment, why would you discount that?
And gender identity can change too. Like, it's not like things are static. As you change as a person, all sorts of things can change. But like, puberty blockers are safe, and they just make it so that you don't go through the wrong puberty until you know which puberty you want to go through. Like, I don't understand why people are so resistant to them for young people, because it's not like we're saying we're going to like change your body and in a way that is going to permanently ruin anything for you. It just makes it so that you don't go through a puberty until you're ready to choose which one.
It goes
But it
back to that
doesn't
whole
make
thing. It's like,
sense.
you're young, you don't know.
Yeah. Or you're young and you
Never
make
thought of
impulsive
ageism.
decisions and you're flippant, which is
But if people don't know because they're too young, maybe they don't know if they're cis either. So maybe everyone should be on puberty blockers until they're 18. Like,
You can decide. With that, with that new revelation or idea. Anything else to say on this? Or should we take a little break and come back to say goodbye? Ready?
Like, maybe
I think that it's a bigger conversation,
Oh, it's a huge conversation.
and yeah, there's lots of layers to it.
Casper, you say something?
Yeah, if you think that trans kids are like people like Madonna are not capable of making their own decisions, then apply the same logic to the kids who are making your phones in Congo. Maybe they're not old enough to make the decision to build your phone.
Thank you. Thank you, Casper. All right. We'll take a break, everyone, and we'll be right back. Don't go anywhere. All right.
that was golden.
That was it. Thank you.
That right there.
There's-
Thank you, Casper.
Yes, that's. I mean, it's so hard to. We were so fortunate growing up. People say, "Oh, it was the olden days," but we were so fortunate in one respect because we didn't have to hear crazy all the time online. When you literally read comments, when you kind of go, how can you, as a sensible, or you're pitching
I'm
yourself
not
as a
sensible.
sensible person,
Yeah.
actually utter these words and speak this way and think this way? It's kind of like it's so hard. And I was like, ignorance was bliss at that point in time because we didn't have social media, we didn't have the internet. But then what it did was really highlight just how cuckoo the world really is, right? Like,
Kenny, I did not count us back. Do you want to repeat this whole thing after I count us back? Because that was a good point, but I'll count us back. 3, if you can remember, we just 3, 2, 1, and we are back to wrap up. Kenny, you were saying something on the break.
I was just saying that, because we're older, and for those of you who don't know, Antoine and I are almost the same age. He's 56, I'm 55. And for us, and for me in North America, because you never came until the late 80s, you said.
89.
And so growing up, we didn't have the internet, and we didn't have this bombardment of crazy that's out there all the time, and we were kind of ignorant to a lot of things. And what now we look at it and you kind of can really see, just like people call it, hate is not new, it's always been there. We can just see it now.
You have platforms to say it now.
Yeah, and that discrimination and that prejudice and those stigmas and the biases become very, very, very apparent, that you can almost it's shockingly crazy just how much is out there, but it's not surprising.
Back in the days, you couldn't just sprout your hate, but now you can just sprout your hate online.
Yeah.
That was a big conversation we had, and I know that I've learned that, see, to me, ageism was always about judging elder people, but I now thanks Cxsper, ageism is about judging any group of people. So once again, I will vow for myself not to ever diminish your contribution or your value, no matter which age on the spectrum you are, younger, older, whatever. We all deserve to have that respect and whatever. The other thing that I learned from Kenny is I think I want to avoid calling people seniors. It sounds diminishing almost. And I want to just say in their 80s, in their 90s, whatever their age, but not seniors. It sounds like a judgment kind of thing to me.
It can be for some people. It really, really can. It can diminish them, and it can also make them feel as if
You're
they're
senior.
being left behind.
Yeah, you're senior. You're done. Yeah. Um, my lovely house. Your feelings on the topic, Morgan.
I mean, just the last thing in my head here is like talking about elders or more experienced people instead of saying seniors, right? But yeah, I mean, people of all ages and all genders and all sexualities and all everythings deserve basic human decency and respect. And that's what it comes down to with all of these conversations. Like nuance is important, but in general, it's just like respect people, you know?
You know what? Great point. We talked about health. We talked about so many things. At the end of it all, it just boils down to respect and love, and making sure that everyone feels their life is valued. Casper, on the topic, wrap up.
Yeah, I think younger people need to have respect for older people, and I think vice versa. Especially, racism is everywhere. I've had a lot of heated conversations with older white queers who were like, "Oh, in my times it was really hard," and I'm looking at them like, "So I got it easy." There's, you know what I mean? And a lot of people who don't understand that, like, you were still white.
This is a turn of my
Some
time.
things don't change. So, like privilege comes, like there's intersections everywhere. And I think as long as we don't think about that, we don't understand people's experiences. And I think, the proof that stereotypes are really wrong, not all old white people are wise and young people are stupid. We have Greta Thunberg and Donald Trump. So
I love that. Yeah, and that's the truth. I hope I actually that if there's any point that I hope our viewers got out of is just is realizing that it's these are just judgmental crap. Brooklyn.
I guess I would say that no individual's journey is linear. There's always something to learn from someone else, regardless of where you are in your journey. And
Yeah,
I think that collectively, if folks underneath the 2SLGBTQ plus umbrella are able to come together and support causes that really matter to us, then we can move forward in really meaningful ways and not leave anyone behind.
I love you people. That's why I love being on this show with you. We all have a beautiful picture of what we want to see the world. Kenny, was that your wrap up, or do you have more wrap up?
All I will say is the same thing as everybody else has said, and it's, age is just a number, and whether or not you can function does not mean you should stop learning and living. That's our bodies, our capabilities are one thing, and there will come a day where I can't do certain things the way that I do them now, and that's part of aging. But that doesn't mean that I can't contribute.
That doesn't mean that it's you. Somebody else has the choice to judge when I'm ready to not contribute anymore.
Yeah, I can still contribute to society, even though I
Absolutely.
can't do a cartwheel. Maybe that is what it is. You know what I mean? Like, I could still contribute.
And growing older is a gift
Mhm.
that we should make sure everybody gets, including people in everywhere, Palestine, like all these places that are being not, that people aren't getting to grow old. So
Yeah,
we should work on
everybody
that.
to live life, grow older, have the opportunities, have the respect, do what they want. And yeah, well, let's keep working on a society and a world that becomes that. Thank you all. Thank you, our viewers, for being here. And I'm not sure, we have no idea for the next topic, but I'm sure we'll come up with something. So keep watching. We're going to keep having fantastic conversations that hopefully we all learn from in the queer community and beyond. Thank you for watching.